What if one woman born far from the throne could reshape a kingdom, ignite wars, or even depose a king? What if their foreign roots were not a weakness, but a wellspring of power, wisdom, and intrigue that carved their names into the very bedrock of nations? From the shadowy courts of the 6th century to the bustling palaces of the late 14th century, medieval Europe was a chessboard of shifting alliances, brutal power plays, and often incredible queens. Many of these queens arrived in their new lands as outsiders, their destinies sealed by political marriages, yet they refused to be mere pawns. They became regents, strategists, patrons, and revolutionaries, defying expectations and often the very men who sought to control them. Prepare to dive into the lives of 11 incredible women who, despite being foreign-born, left an undeniable mark on the medieval world. Number 11. Brunhilda of Austrasia. In the mid-6th century, the old Roman world was a fragmented collection of Germanic kingdoms, none more volatile than that of the Franks. Into this brutal landscape stepped Brunhilda, a Visigothic princess born in Toledo, Spain around 543. Her royal lineage was impressive, descended from powerful Visigothic kings, and her education was said to be far superior to many of her contemporaries. Steeped in the remnants of Roman learning, she was reportedly beautiful, intelligent, and fiercely determined, qualities that would soon be tested in the cutthroat Frankish courts. Her journey across the Pyrenees and into Frankish Gaul was not merely a marriage procession. It was an entrance into a saga of ambition, revenge, and unprecedented power. In 566, she married Sigebert I, the King of Austrasia, one of the 4 major Frankish kingdoms. It was a union meant to solidify alliances and bring a touch of Visigothic sophistication to the wilder Frankish court. Sigebert was reportedly captivated by her, and their marriage seemed a promising start for a powerful royal couple. However, Brunhilda's arrival ignited one of the bloodiest and longest-running feuds of the early medieval period. Sigebert's brother, Chilperic, the first king of Neustria, was so impressed by Brunhilda that he sought a royal bride of similar standing. He married her sister Galswintha. But Chilperic was a man of fickle affections and ruthless ambition. He soon cast aside Galswintha, arranging for her murder, all to take his mistress Fredegund as his queen. This act of violence sparked a vendetta that would consume the Frankish kingdoms for decades. Brunhilda, deeply grieved and outraged by her sister's murder, spurred her husband Sigebert to war against Chilperic and Fredegund. This was no ordinary family squabble. It was a dynastic conflict fueled by personal animosity and a fierce desire for justice. Brunhilda was not content to remain in the background. She actively pushed Sigebert to avenge Galswintha. When Sigebert was assassinated in 575, likely at the instigation of Fredegund, Brunhilda's situation became precarious. Her young son, Childebert II, was now king, and she found herself a foreign queen regent in a hostile court. Despite her immense grief and the dangers surrounding her, Brunhilda refused to yield. She became regent for her son and later for her grandsons, ruling for nearly 4 decades. This was an astonishing feat in an era where women's power was often limited and temporary. She was a shrewd and effective ruler, focused on centralizing royal authority and improving the infrastructure of her kingdom. Chronicles of the time, often written by hostile clerics, grudgingly acknowledged her administrative prowess. She repaired roads, built churches, established monasteries, and reformed the royal treasury. She sought to impose order on a kingdom plagued by warring magnates and corrupt officials, often clashing with the powerful Frankish nobility who resented her authority and her foreign ways. Her rule was marked by relentless conflict, not only against Fredegund and her son, but also against rebellious nobles and bishops who challenged her regency. She navigated a treacherous political landscape, often using diplomacy and strategic alliances, but also not shying away from ruthless measures when necessary. She was a woman of immense strength, but also one who attracted bitter enemies. Her critics accused her of cruelty, avarice, and witchcraft, often painting her as a she-devil to justify opposition to her rule. One of the most dramatic turns in her long career came when her grandson, Theodoric II, King of Burgundy, allowed himself to be swayed by noble factions hostile to Brunhilda. She was expelled from his court only to seek refuge with her other grandson, Theodebert II, King of Austrasia. For a time, she manipulated the brothers into fighting each other, a testament to her enduring political cunning. Brunhilda's end was as brutal and dramatic as her life. In 613, at nearly 70 years old, after decades of fighting to maintain her power and the stability of the Austrasian monarchy, she was finally defeated. Powerful Neustrian mayor of the palace, Pepin of Landen, and Bishop Arnulf of Metz, leaders of the rebellious Frankish nobility, conspired with King Clothar II, Fredegon's son, to overthrow her. Clothar captured Brunhilda and subjected her to a public trial, accusing her of the murders of 10 Frankish kings and nobles, a clear exaggeration designed to demonize her and justify his actions. After 3 days of torture, she was paraded before Clothar's army on a camel, a deliberate humiliation. Finally, she was tied by a limb to the tail of a wild horse and dragged to her death. Her body was then burned and her ashes scattered. This horrific end was a calculated act, intended to erase her memory and serve as a warning to any who dared challenge the power of the landed aristocracy. Despite the vilification, Brunhilda's legacy is a powerful, politically astute, and incredibly resilient queen. She held power for longer than almost any other woman in early medieval Europe, demonstrating remarkable administrative skill and an unyielding will to survive and rule. She was a foreign-born queen who not only adapted to a new brutal world, but fundamentally shaped it, even if her methods earned her a place in history as both a powerful ruler and a feared villain. Number 10. Judith of Bavaria. Step into the tumultuous early 9th century, a time when Charlemagne's vast Frankish Empire, the Carolingian dynasty, dominated Western Europe. Born around 797 in Bavaria, Judith was a member of the powerful Welf family, a lineage that would rise to great prominence across Europe in the centuries to come. Her family was known for its intelligence, ambition, and wealth, qualities that Judith herself would embody. She received an education far beyond the norm for women of her time, reportedly fluent in Latin and skilled in rhetoric, a testament to the cultural vibrancy of Bavaria. In 819, at a synod in Aachen, Judith captivated Emperor Louis the Pious, Charlemagne's son and successor. Louis had recently lost his first wife, Ermengarde, and was seeking a new empress. Judith, with her renowned beauty, intellect, and noble lineage, was an ideal choice. Their marriage was swift, making her Empress of the Franks and Queen of the Lombards, a title that came with immense prestige and power. She brought with her not only her charm and intelligence, but also her family's vast networks and resources. Quickly establishing herself as a force within the imperial court, Judith's influence became apparent almost immediately. She was not content to be a passive consort. She actively participated in imperial politics. Her most significant impact stemmed from her fervent desire to secure a share of the empire for her only son, Charles, born in 823. Louis already had 3 adult sons from his first marriage, Lothair, Pepin, and Louis the German, who had been assigned their own kingdoms within the empire through the Ordinatio Imperii of 817. This existing division left no territory for young Charles. Judith began a relentless campaign to persuade her husband to redivide the empire, a move that directly challenged the established succession plan. She argued passionately for Charles's rights, appealing to Louis's paternal affection and his belief in divine will. Her persistence, combined with the emperor's growing infatuation, eventually bore fruit. In 829, Louis, under Judith's influence, created a new kingdom for Charles, assigning him Alemannia, Alsace, and parts of Burgundy. This act, known as the Duchy of Alemannia, shattered the Ordinatio Imperii and enraged Louis's elder sons, who saw their inheritances diminished. This redivision ignited a series of devastating civil wars that would plague the Carolingian Empire for the remainder of Louis the Pious's reign. And beyond, the elder sons, feeling betrayed and disinherited, repeatedly rebelled against their father, often targeting Judith as the primary instigator of their troubles. They accused her of witchcraft, adultery, and undue influence over the emperor. At one point, during a rebellion in 830, Judith was seized by the rebels, shaved, and forced to take the veil as a nun, confined to a convent in Poitiers. However, Judith's resilience was extraordinary. Louis the Pious, despite his initial weakness, managed to rally support and eventually freed his wife. She was brought back to court, and through a public oath cleared her name against the accusations of infidelity. Her return marked a renewed period of political activism. She continued to lobby for Charles's future, often acting as a key negotiator and strategist in the complex web of family politics. She played a significant role in several reconciliations and betrayals among the brothers, always with the goal of securing a powerful position for Charles. Judith also became a patron of arts and learning, contributing to the Carolingian Renaissance. She was a close confidant of many leading scholars and theologians of her day, including Harbanus Maurus and Walafrid Strabo. Her court was a center of intellectual activity, reflecting her own cultured background. She commissioned manuscripts and fostered an environment of literary and theological debate, further enhancing the intellectual prestige of the imperial court. Despite her intellect and political acumen, Judith remained a deeply polarizing figure. Her critics, particularly the powerful bishops and nobles who sided with the elder sons, saw her as an embodiment of feminine corruption and a threat to the stability of the empire. Monastic chronicles, like that of the Annals of Saint Bertin, often painted her in an extremely negative light, blaming her for the empire's misfortunes. Yet her supporters praised her intelligence, piety, and loyalty to her husband and son. Judith's influence lasted until Louis the Pious's death in 840. Even then, she continued to advise Charles the Bald, her son, in the ensuing struggles against his brothers, which culminated in the Treaty of Verdun in 843, dividing the Frankish Empire into 3 distinct kingdoms. Charles the Bald secured West Francia largely thanks to his mother's tireless efforts to secure his inheritance. Judith of Bavaria died in 843, having lived a life of immense power, controversy, and survival. She was a foreign-born empress who defied conventions, directly intervening in the most critical political decisions of her era. Her unwavering determination to secure her son's future led to civil wars that permanently reshaped the map of Europe, ensuring her place as one of the most influential, albeit controversial, women of the early Middle Ages. Number 9. Adelaide of Burgundy. Imagine a princess born into a world of fractured kingdoms and fierce rivalries, destined to become an empress twice over, a saint and a powerful political force. That was Adelaide of Burgundy, born around 931 in Orbe, in what is now modern-day Switzerland. Her father, Rudolf II, was king of Upper Burgundy and Italy, making her a prized bride in the intricate political chess game of the 10th century. Her early life was spent in royal circles, receiving an education befitting a future queen, including Latin and courtly etiquette. She was known for her beauty, intelligence, and a piety that would later contribute to her canonization. Her first political marriage, in 947, was to Lothair II, the King of Italy. This union was supposed to solidify her father's influence in the volatile Italian peninsula. However, their marriage was short-lived. In 950, Lothair died suddenly, almost certainly poisoned by Berengar II of Ivrea, a powerful Italian nobleman who immediately seized the throne and sought to legitimize and marry his son, Adalbert. Adelaide, however, was no meek maiden. She fiercely resisted the forced marriage, refusing to give her consent. This defiance enraged Berengar, who imprisoned her in a castle on Lake Garda, subjecting her to harsh conditions and threats. Her plight, a young widowed queen, trapped and abused, sent shockwaves through the courts of Europe. It was a blatant challenge to the dignity of royalty and the sanctity of marriage. In an act of audacious bravery, Adelaide managed to escape her prison. With the help of a loyal priest, she reportedly dug a tunnel from her cell and fled across the lake, seeking refuge in the fortress of Canossa, held by the powerful Bishop Adelhard. From Canossa, she sent a desperate plea for help to Otto I, the formidable king of Germany. Otto, a pragmatic and ambitious ruler, saw this as a golden opportunity. Italy was a prize, and Adelaide, as the legitimate queen and daughter of a king, offered a convenient pretext for intervention. In 951, Otto marched into Italy, defeated Berengar, and rescued Adelaide. Their meeting was fraught with political significance and personal appeal. Otto, reportedly impressed by her courage and grace, married her in Pavia, Italy, in 951. This marriage not only made Adelaide Queen of Germany and Italy, but also provided Otto with a legitimate claim to the Italian crown, and eventually the imperial title. Their marriage ushered in a new era for both of them. In 962, Otto and Adelaide were crowned Emperor and Empress by Pope John XII in Rome, resurrecting the imperial title that had been dormant for decades. Adelaide became the first Empress of the Holy Roman Empire, a title that would signify immense spiritual and political power for centuries to come. As Empress, Adelaide was not merely a ceremonial figure. She was a full partner in Otto's reign, actively involved in political and ecclesiastical affairs. She served as regent for her husband during his absences, a testament to her administrative capabilities and political acumen. She had her own royal court, issued charters, and maintained correspondence with many of the leading figures of her time, including popes and abbots. She was known for her strong influence over Otto, often providing counsel and mediating disputes. Her foreign birth, rather than being a hindrance, gave her unique perspective and connections across the European kingdoms. After Otto I's death in 973, Adelaide remained a powerful figure. Her son Otto II initially treated her with respect. However, tensions arose when Otto II's Byzantine wife, Theophanu, who would later become another influential empress herself, grew to resent Adelaide's influence and preferred position. Adelaide was temporarily banished from court due to this rivalry, a clear demonstration of the cutthroat politics, even within royal families. Despite these setbacks, Adelaide's resilience shone through. She eventually reconciled with her son and daughter-in-law. When Otto II died suddenly in 983, leaving behind a 3-year-old heir, Otto III, Adelaide's political strength became absolutely crucial. She engaged in a fierce power struggle for the regency of her grandson, primarily against Henry the Quarrelsome, Duke of Bavaria. Adelaide, alongside her daughter-in-law Theophanu, skillfully outmaneuvered Henry, securing the regency for themselves. This was an extraordinary moment. 2 empresses, one a foreign-born Byzantine princess, and the other a foreign-born Burgundian queen, jointly ruling the Holy Roman Empire on behalf of a child emperor. Adelaide focused on the spiritual welfare of the empire and her dynasty. She became a fervent patron of monasteries, establishing new religious houses and reforming existing ones, particularly in Italy and her native Burgundy. Her patronage helped to spread the Cluniac reform movement, which aimed to revitalize monasticism and combat corruption within the church. She also maintained strong diplomatic ties, particularly with France and Burgundy, using her family connections to secure peace and alliances. Adelaide eventually retired from active politics, dedicating her later years to prayer and charity, becoming an exemplar of pious queenship. She died in 999 at the convent of Celtes, which she had founded. Shortly after her death, she was canonized, revered for her piety, charity, and strong advocacy for the Church. Adelaide of Burgundy was a foreign-born queen who rose from imprisonment to empress, surviving political intrigue and dynastic struggles. Her intelligence, defiance, and unwavering commitment to her family and faith allowed her to wield immense power, shape the Holy Roman Empire, and leave a legacy as both a political powerhouse and a revered saint. Number 8. Theophanu. In the glittering, sophisticated world of the Byzantine Empire, a princess named Theophanu was born around 955. She was not just any princess. She belonged to the highest echelons of the imperial court in Constantinople, a city that was the center of culture, learning, and power in the East. Her exact parentage is debated, but she was almost certainly related to the reigning Macedonian dynasty, perhaps a niece or grandniece of Emperor John I, Tzimiskes. She was raised in a court steeped in ancient Greek learning, luxurious arts, and complex diplomacy, receiving an education that was unparalleled in Western Europe at the time. She was renowned for her beauty, sharp intellect, and aristocratic bearing, characteristics that would soon impress a king from the barbarian West. Theophanu's destiny was sealed by a diplomatic marriage, a grand scheme to unite East and West. In 972, she traveled to Rome to marry Otto II, the young co-emperor of the Holy Roman Empire. This union was highly significant, intended to forge an alliance between the two great empires of Christendom. Otto I, her future father-in-law, had specifically requested a Byzantine princess for his son, recognizing the cultural prestige and political advantages such a match would bring. The wedding itself was a spectacle held in Rome and presided over by Pope John XIII. Theophanu arrived with a magnificent dowry and an entourage that brought the opulence of Constantinople to the Latin West. She immediately made an impression, not just with her regal presence, but with her quick grasp of Latin and her sharp political mind. She was crowned Empress alongside Otto II, signifying her equal standing in the imperial partnership. From the moment she arrived, Theophanu exercised significant influence. She was described as highly intelligent and ambitious, fiercely devoted to her husband and their joint imperial project. She actively participated in state affairs, sitting beside Otto II during public audiences, and frequently interjecting in discussions. This was a striking departure from the traditional role of a queen in the West, where their presence was often more symbolic. Her Byzantine background, with its traditions of powerful empresses, gave her a different perspective on royal authority. Theophanu's most enduring impact was arguably cultural. She brought Byzantine refinement, luxury, and artistic traditions to the German court, which was comparatively less sophisticated. She introduced new fashions, such as silk robes and elaborate jewels, and promoted Byzantine influenced art and architecture. She was a patron of scholars and artists, fostering an environment where Greek culture and learning were valued. The German court, under her influence, began to adopt more elaborate ceremonies and courtly rituals, mirroring the splendor of Constantinople. This cultural exchange had a lasting effect on Ottonian art, architecture, and courtly life. Her political influence soared after Otto II's sudden death in 983, leaving behind their 3-year-old son, Otto III. Theophanu immediately seized the regency, facing down rivals, most notably Henry the Quarrelsome of Bavaria. She proved to be an incredibly shrewd and determined regent. She secured the young Otto III's position on the throne, outmaneuvering powerful dukes and bishops who sought to exploit the power vacuum. As sole regent for 8 years, 985 to 991, Theophanu effectively ruled the Holy Roman Empire. She issued charters in her own name, a clear sign of her authority, often styled as Empress Theophanu, or even Theophanu by the grace of God, Augusta Imperatrix. She managed foreign policy, engaging in diplomacy with the French and Italian kingdoms. She also secured the empire's borders, particularly against the Slavic tribes in the east, launching military campaigns when necessary. Her diplomatic skills were particularly highlighted when she arranged for the release of her young son, who had been kidnapped by Henry the Quarrelsome. Theophanu was known for her sternness and strict adherence to imperial dignity. She was a strong advocate for the rights and authority of the emperor, instilling in her young son Otto III a deep reverence for the imperial office and a vision of a restored Roman Empire. Integrating both Eastern and Western traditions, her regency provided stability during a critical period, allowing her son to come of age and eventually pursue his own ambitions. Imperial dreams. Her legacy is that of a powerful, intelligent, and culturally astute empress. She was a foreign-born queen who not only successfully governed a sprawling empire, but also enriched its culture and shaped the political philosophy of its next ruler. She broke traditional Western gender norms for rulers, demonstrating that a woman, especially one from a different cultural background, could effectively wield the full power of the imperial crown. Theophanu died in 991, leaving behind a strengthened empire and a son well prepared for his monumental role. Number 7. Matilda of Flanders. In the mid-11th century, the Duchy of Normandy was a rising power, but its Duke William was a controversial figure, born out of wedlock. To legitimize his rule and secure his position, he needed a powerful alliance, and his eyes turned to Flanders, a wealthy and influential county. Into this world was born Matilda around 1031, daughter of Baldwin V, Count of Flanders, and Adela of France, daughter of King Robert II of France. Her lineage was impeccable, connecting her to the French royal house and the powerful counts of Flanders. She was known for her piety, intelligence, and even her small stature, which reportedly made her husband's immense height seem even more pronounced. Matilda's marriage to William, Duke of Normandy, was initially fraught with obstacles. The Church, specifically Pope Leo IX, forbade the union due to a distant kinship, likely a move to assert papal authority over secular rulers. For years, Matilda and William defied the papal ban, demonstrating their strong will and mutual devotion. It was not until 1059, after much negotiation and the promise of building 2 monasteries as penance, that the marriage was finally sanctioned, their union taking place around 1051 to 1052. Was a significant political coup for William, giving him a legitimate, powerful, and wealthy bride, and a crucial alliance with Flanders. Matilda proved to be a formidable partner to William. While he was away campaigning, she served as regent of Normandy, demonstrating a keen administrative ability. She issued charters, oversaw legal disputes, and maintained order, proving herself capable of governing a duchy known for its strong-willed nobility. Her regencies were crucial, allowing William to focus on his military ambitions without fear of instability at home. Her most famous contribution came in 1066, during William's preparations for the invasion of England. This was an audacious and incredibly risky undertaking. Matilda, through her influence with her father, secured critical financial and naval support from Flanders, which was vital for the success of the expedition. While William was away, leading the Norman forces across the English Channel, Matilda remained in Normandy acting as regent. This was no passive role. She was responsible for maintaining order, managing the duchy's resources, and ensuring continued support for the invading army. After William's conquest of England, Matilda was crowned Queen of England in 1068 at Westminster Abbey, making her the first Queen of England following the Norman conquest. Her coronation was a grand affair, signaling the establishment of the new Norman dynasty and the unification of England and Normandy under one ruler. She was crowned with full ceremonial honors, further solidifying her status as a legitimate monarch. As queen, Matilda continued to exert significant influence. She accompanied William on his visits between England and Normandy, playing a vital role in integrating the two realms. She was a strong advocate for the church commissioning and patronizing monastic houses, particularly the Abbey of Saint-Trinier in Caen, which she and William had founded as part of their penance for their initially unsanctioned marriage. This abbey became a prominent center for education and religious life. Matilda was also known for her role in the education of her children. She ensured that her daughters received a good education, and her sons were trained in both warfare and governance. Her eldest son, Robert Curthose, would later inherit Normandy, while her younger son, William Rufus, would succeed William as King of England, and Henry I would also become King of England. Her maternal influence played a part in shaping the future rulers of England and Normandy. Despite her immense power and royal status, Matilda's life was not without challenges. Her relationship with her eldest son, Robert Curthose, was often strained, particularly when he rebelled against his father. Records indicate that Matilda, perhaps out of maternal affection, sometimes supported Robert against William, causing rifts within the royal family. She was also a mother who experienced loss, with several of her children preceding her. Matilda of Flanders died in 1083 in Normandy, outliving her husband by only 4 years. She was buried in the Abbey of Saint-Trinier, the monastery she helped found. Her legacy is one of a foreign-born queen who was an indispensable partner to one of history's most famous conquerors. She was a capable regent, a shrewd political ally, and a pivotal figure in legitimizing and consolidating the Norman dynasty in England. Her contributions, often overshadowed by William's military achievements, were fundamental to the successful establishment of a new kingdom and the shaping of Anglo-Norman society. Number 6. Eleanor of Aquitaine. She is perhaps the most famous, most influential, and most enigmatic queen of the Middle Ages, a woman whose life story reads like an epic saga of power, passion, and rebellion. Born around 1122 in Poitiers, Aquitaine, Eleanor was no ordinary noblewoman. She was the eldest daughter of William X, Duke of Aquitaine, and Count of Poitou, making her the heiress to one of the largest and wealthiest duchies in France. Aquitaine was a land of poets, troubadours, and a vibrant court culture, and Eleanor grew up immersed in this sophisticated environment. She was highly educated, fluent in Latin, skilled in diplomacy, and reportedly strikingly beautiful and fiercely intelligent. Her early life was marked by unexpected turns. In 1137, her father died suddenly, making the 15-year-old Eleanor the most sought-after heiress in Europe. Her father's dying wish perhaps strategically placed her under the guardianship of King Louis VI of France. Louis quickly arranged her marriage to his own son and heir, Louis VII, hoping to unite Aquitaine with the French crown. Her first marriage to Louis VII was a clash of personalities and cultures. Eleanor was spirited, worldly, and accustomed to the liberal court of Aquitaine. Louis, on the other hand, was deeply pious, austere, and somewhat reserved. Their union, though politically advantageous, was personally challenging. Eleanor accompanied Louis on the Second Crusade, where her presence and strong opinions often caused friction, particularly with the conservative church leaders. Her independent spirit and perceived frivolity were often criticized, and her lack of a male heir after many years of marriage became a source of increasing tension. After 15 years and 2 daughters, their marriage was annulled in 1152 on grounds of consanguinity, blood relation, a convenient legal loophole. Within weeks, a staggering move that shocked all of Europe, Eleanor married Henry Plantagenet, Duke of Normandy and Count of Anjou, who was 11 years her junior. This second marriage was a calculated power play. It immediately joined her vast lands of Aquitaine, with Henry's already considerable holdings, creating an enormous cross-channel empire that dwarfed the Capetian Kingdom of France. 2 years later, in 1154, Henry became King Henry II of England, making Eleanor Queen of England and Duchess of Normandy, Anjou, and Aquitaine. As Queen of England, Eleanor was no mere consort. She brought her vibrant Aquitanian court culture to England, enriching the Anglo-Norman court with troubadours, poets, and new ideas about courtly love and chivalry. She was a patron of the arts, literature, and legal reform. She actively participated in governance, often serving as regent when Henry was away fighting in his vast continental domains. She traveled extensively throughout her territories, personally administering justice and ensuring the stability of her duchy. She was a powerful force in English politics, issuing charters, hearing petitions, and even conducting diplomatic negotiations. However, her relationship with Henry II, while initially passionate and productive, they had 8 children, including the future kings Richard the Lionheart and John, eventually soured. Their dynamic was one of 2 strong-willed rulers, each accustomed to being in charge. Henry's numerous affairs and his increasing attempts to curtail Eleanor's independent power in Aquitaine led to bitter conflict. In a dramatic turn, Eleanor actively encouraged her sons to rebel against their father, a monumental act of defiance from a queen. Her involvement in the Great Revolt of 1173 to 1174, where her sons, Henry the young King Richard and Geoffrey, rose against Henry II, led to her capture. For the next 16 years, from 1174 to 1189, Eleanor was held under house arrest or in various English castles by Henry II. Despite her imprisonment, her influence persisted. She remained a symbol of Aquitanian independence and a figure whose very existence constrained Henry's options. Upon Henry II's death in 1189, her beloved son, Richard I, Richard the Lionheart, ascended the throne, and Eleanor, now 67, was immediately released and restored to immense power. She acted as regent for Richard while he was away on the Third Crusade, and later during his captivity in Austria. She demonstrated remarkable political skill and energy, raising Richard's ransom, managing the kingdom, and quelling rebellions. She even personally traveled across Europe to secure Richard's release. After Richard's death, in 1199, Eleanor actively supported her youngest son, John, as his successor, traveling extensively to ensure his acceptance by various noble factions. She served as an invaluable advisor to John, particularly in navigating complex relationships with France. Even in her late 70s and early 80s, she continued to be a formidable presence, engaging in diplomacy, signing treaties, and maintaining her vast Aquitanian estates. Eleanor of Aquitaine died in 1204 at the remarkable age of 82. She was buried at Fontefraud Abbey, alongside Henry II and Richard I. Her life spanned nearly a century of medieval history, and she was a foreign-born queen who became the matriarch of 2 powerful royal dynasties, the Capetians of France and the Plantagenets of England. She was a political strategist, a cultural innovator, a patron of the arts, and a fiercely independent woman who defied expectations and exerted unparalleled endurance. Her legacy is one of unparalleled power and enduring legend. Number 5. Blanche of Castile. From the vibrant, sun-drenched kingdom of Castile in Spain came a princess destined to become one of France's most formidable and respected queens. Born around 1188, Blanche was the daughter of Alfonso VIII, King of Castile, and Eleanor of England, herself a daughter of the legendary Eleanor of Aquitaine. This made Blanche a granddaughter of one of history's most powerful queens, and a direct descendant of the English Plantagenet line. Growing up in the Castilian court, she received an education, emphasizing piety, diplomacy, and the management of large estates, all skills she would put to remarkable use. Her marriage in 1200 was a strategic move to solidify peace between England and France. Her grandmother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, personally traveled to Castile to select Blanche and escort her to France for her wedding. At just 12 years old, Blanche was married to Louis, the son and heir of King Philip II, Augustus of France. This union, though born of political necessity, was meant to bring an end to decades of Anglo-French conflict. Blanche, despite her youth, quickly adapted to the French court, demonstrating a quiet dignity and a sharp intellect. Blanche's real ascent to power began in 1223 when her husband ascended the throne. As Louis VIII of France, as queen consort, she immediately proved to be an active and influential partner. She had already earned the respect of her father-in-law, Philip Augustus, who reportedly confided in her during Louis VIII's absences. She was renowned for her piety and strong moral compass, qualities that resonated deeply in medieval society. However, her true mettle was revealed when Louis VIII died suddenly in 1226 after only 3 years on the throne. Their eldest son, Louis IX, was just 12 years old, far too young to rule. In this precarious situation, Blanche of Castile stepped forward and seized the regency of France. This was a hugely challenging position for a foreign-born woman, especially given the turbulent political climate of the time. Many powerful French barons, some still resentful of royal authority, saw the young king and his foreign mother as an opportunity to challenge the crown. Blanche's regency, which lasted until Louis IX came of age in 1234, was a masterclass in political maneuvering, military strategy, and unwavering determination. She faced multiple rebellions from powerful feudal lords, including Hugh X of Lusignan and Peter Mauclerc of Brittany. Blanche did not shy away from military action. She personally led armies, rallied loyal barons, and displayed a steely resolve that surprised her male opponents. She also showed remarkable diplomatic skill, often negotiating favorable treaties and using strategic marriages to secure alliances. Her most significant achievement during the Regency was the successful conclusion of the Albigensian Crusade in southern France. Through a combination of military force and shrewd diplomacy, she compelled Raymond VII, Count of Toulouse, to sign the Treaty of Paris in 1229. This treaty formally incorporated large parts of Languedoc into the royal domain, significantly expanding the power and territory of the French crown and crushing the Cathar heresy. Blanche was also deeply committed to her son's education and moral upbringing. She instilled in Louis IX the strong Christian values and sense of justice that would later earn him sainthood. She surrounded him with capable advisors and ensured he was prepared for the responsibilities of kingship. Her influence on Louis IX was profound and enduring, making him one of France's most revered monarchs. Even after Louis IX came of age, Blanche continued to be a trusted advisor and powerful figure in the French court. She continued to manage royal finances, negotiate treaties, and even acted as regent again when Louis IX embarked on the Seventh Crusade in 1248. Her administrative capacity was exceptional, and she maintained the stability of the kingdom during her son's long absence. She was in many ways the de facto ruler of France for much of her adult life. However, her strong influence also sometimes led to tensions with her adult son, particularly as he grew older and sought to assert his own authority. Despite any occasional disagreements, Louis IX always held his mother in the highest esteem, recognizing her indispensable role in his early reign and the stability of the kingdom. Blanche of Castile died in 1252 while her son was still on crusade. Her passing was a profound loss for Louis IX and for France. She was a foreign-born queen who not only secured the throne for her young son, but actively expanded and consolidated the power of the French monarchy, transforming it into a dominant force in Europe. Her intelligence, piety, political acumen, and military prowess made her one of the most effective and respected rulers of the 13th century, earning her a lasting place in French history. Number 4. Margaret of Provence. In the mid-13th century, a time of grand crusades and burgeoning Gothic cathedrals, came Margaret, the eldest of 4 remarkable sisters from Provence. A wealthy and culturally rich region in southern France, born around 1221, she was the daughter of Raymond Berengar IV, Count of Provence, and Beatrice of Savoy. Her family was renowned for its literary court and its strategic alliances. Margaret grew up in a vibrant artistic environment, receiving an education befitting a powerful future queen, likely fluent in several languages and well-versed in courtly etiquette and diplomacy. Her marriage in 1234 was to King Louis IX of France, who would later be canonized as Saint Louis. This union was highly symbolic, orchestrated by Blanche of Castile, Louis' formidable mother and regent, to bring Provence into the French sphere of influence. Margaret was crowned Queen of France and Sens shortly after her wedding. From the outset, she faced the challenge of living under the shadow of her powerful mother-in-law, Blanche, who was determined to maintain control over her beloved son and the kingdom. Initially, Margaret's influence was somewhat curtailed by Blanche, who was notoriously possessive of Louis and kept a tight rein on the royal household. Accounts suggest that Blanche even restricted Louis's access to his own wife, especially when Margaret was pregnant, to ensure the new queen did not distract her son from his royal duties. Despite this, Margaret was devoted to Louis, and their marriage, though politically arranged, grew into one of deep affection and mutual respect. She bore him 11 children, ensuring the continuation of the Capetian dynasty, as Queen Margaret became known for her piety and her active involvement in religious affairs. She was a keen patron of the church, supporting monasteries and contributing to the construction of religious buildings. Her faith was sincere and aligned perfectly with Louis IX's own profound piety, creating a strong spiritual bond between them. She accompanied Louis on the Seventh Crusade to the Holy Land in 1248, a truly extraordinary undertaking for a medieval queen. Her participation in the crusade was a defining period of her life and demonstrated her incredible resilience and political acumen. When Louis IX was captured by the Mamluks in Egypt in 1250, Margaret, who was in Damietta and pregnant, found herself in an incredibly perilous situation. Despite the overwhelming danger and the fear of an impending attack on the city, she took charge. She demonstrated remarkable courage and leadership, holding the morale of the Crusader forces together, organizing defenses, and even famously declaring that she would allow no surrender. She gave birth during this crisis and even named her son John Tristan in memory of the sorrow of that period. After Louis's release, Margaret continued to be an active participant in his long stay in the Holy Land, maintaining diplomatic ties and securing the safety of the remaining Crusader forces. Her presence and actions during this time were crucial for the survival of the Crusader kingdom and for the eventual return of Louis and his forces to France. Back in France, Margaret continued to be an influential figure at court. While she did not always wield the direct political power of her mother-in-law, she was a trusted confidant of Louis IX and a significant figure in her own right. She became a patron of literature and culture, contributing to the intellectual flourishing of the French court. After Louis IX's death in 1270, while on the Eighth Crusade, Margaret faced a new challenge. Her son, Philip III, was now king, but she continued to assert her rights and influence. She was particularly keen to protect the interests of her daughters and to secure the inheritance of her remaining Provençal lands, which had been passed to her sister Beatrice's husband, Charles of Anjou. She engaged in legal battles and political negotiations for decades, fighting to reclaim what she believed were her rightful possessions and maintain her status. Her legal battles, often against powerful figures, highlight her tenacity and her deep understanding of property law and feudal rights. Margaret of Provence died in 1295, outliving her husband by 25 years. She was a foreign-born queen who, despite initial challenges and living in the shadow of a dominant mother-in-law, carved out a significant role for herself. Her courageous leadership during the Seventh Crusade, her steadfast piety, and her unwavering devotion to her family and kingdom demonstrated a powerful influence that belied her sometimes constrained position. She was a queen who, by simply enduring and leading through crisis, shaped the destiny of France and the Crusader movement. Number 3. Isabella of France. Known to history as the She-Wolf of France, Isabella was a queen whose life was a dramatic saga of political intrigue, personal betrayal, and audacious rebellion. born around 1295 in Paris. She was the daughter of Philip IV of France, Philip the Fair, one of the most powerful and ruthless kings of his era. Her mother was Joan I of Navarre, also a queen regnant in her own right. Isabella grew up in the sophisticated and often brutal French court. Known for its political machinations and strict etiquette, she was renowned for her beauty and charisma, qualities that would serve her well in her tumultuous life. Her marriage in 1308 was a pivotal moment in Anglo-French relations. At just 12 years old, Isabella was married to King Edward II of England. The union was intended to cement peace between the two rival kingdoms, which had been locked in intermittent conflict for decades. Edward II, however, was a king deeply unpopular with his barons, largely due to his excessive favoritism towards male companions, particularly Piers Gaveston, and his perceived weakness as a ruler. Isabella quickly found herself in a challenging position. Her husband's devotion to Gaveston and later to Hugh Despenser, the younger, led to social and political isolation for the queen. She was often humiliated, financially neglected, and marginalized at court. Chroniclers of the time suggest she suffered greatly from Edward's neglect and the open favoritism shown to his male favorites, which often came at the expense of the queen's dignity and her household. Despite these personal hardships, Isabella was not a woman to be trifled with. She was fiercely intelligent, resilient, and acutely aware of her royal status and the dignity it demanded. She actively participated in diplomatic efforts to maintain peace between England and France, particularly during a period of escalating tensions over Gascony, the last English possession in France. In 1325, she traveled to France to negotiate on Edward's behalf, a mission that would fundamentally change the course of her life and English history. Once in France, Isabella refused to return to England. She publicly denounced Edward II's rule, citing the corruption and abuses of the Despensers who had effectively taken control of the kingdom. She shrewdly gained the support of her brother King Charles IV of France and other powerful figures. It was during this time that she began a scandalous affair with Roger Mortimer, a powerful English baron who had been exiled by Edward II. This alliance, both political and personal, became the driving force behind her dramatic actions. In 1326, Isabella and Mortimer, with a small force, launched an invasion of England. Their cause quickly gained momentum, as many English nobles resentful of Edward II and the Despensers flocked to their banner. The invasion was a stunning success. Edward II's regime collapsed rapidly, and he and the Despensers were captured. Hugh Despenser, the younger, was brutally executed, highlighting the depth of public anger against him. Isabella's ultimate act of defiance was the deposition of her own husband. In January 1327, Edward II was formally deposed by Parliament, the first English king to be removed from power in such a manner. His young son, Edward III, was crowned king with Isabella and Mortimer effectively acting as regents. This was an unprecedented display of power by a foreign-born queen who, through her sheer will and strategic alliances, had overthrown a reigning monarch. For the next 3 years, Isabella and Mortimer wielded absolute power in England. They controlled the young king, managed the royal finances, and dominated the government. Their rule, however, became increasingly unpopular. Mortimer grew arrogant, and Isabella, despite her earlier popularity, faced growing resentment for her perceived excesses and her relationship with Mortimer. The rumors surrounding Edward II's death in Berkeley Castle in September 1327, widely believed to be a brutal murder orchestrated by Mortimer and Isabella, further tarnished their image. The young King Edward III, chafing under the control of his mother and Mortimer, eventually decided to assert his own authority. In a dramatic coup in 1330, Edward III, with the help of loyal nobles, surprised Mortimer and Isabella at Nottingham Castle. Mortimer was seized, tried, and quickly executed for treason. Isabella herself was spared due to her royal blood and her status as the king's mother. but she was stripped of her political power and placed under comfortable house arrest. Isabella of France died in 1358, having lived a life of extraordinary highs and lows. Despite her ignominious end, her influence was undeniable. She was a foreign-born queen who transformed from a neglected consort into a revolutionary leader, an invader, and the architect of her husband's downfall. Her actions fundamentally reshaped the English monarchy, demonstrating the fragility of even a king's power when faced with a determined opposition led by his own queen. She remains one of the most compelling and controversial figures in medieval history. Number 2. Philippa of Hainault. In the early 14th century, Europe was a state for grand dynastic rivalries, and the Low Countries were a rich source of potential alliances. Enter Philippa of Hainault, born around 1314 in Valenciennes, in what is now modern-day France. She was the daughter of William I, Count of Hainault and Holland, and Jeanne of Valois, who was a granddaughter of King Philip III of France. Her family was well-connected, wealthy, and politically astute, making Philippa a desirable bride for any ambitious monarch. She was known for her kindness, intelligence, and a strong sense of duty. Her destiny was entwined with the English throne early on. In 1326, at the tender age of 12, she was betrothed to Edward III, the young heir to the English throne. This alliance was orchestrated by Edward's mother, Isabella of France, and her lover, Roger Mortimer, who sought support from Philippa's father against Edward II. Philippa arrived in England in December 1327 and was married to Edward III in January 1328 at York Minster. As Queen of England, Philippa quickly established herself as a popular and influential figure, especially in contrast to the tumultuous reigns of her mother-in-law, Isabella, and her husband's weak father, Edward II. She possessed a warmth and practicality that endeared her to the English people and nobility. Unlike many medieval queens, she was not primarily known for political intrigue or dynastic conflict, but rather for her steadfast support of her husband, her numerous charitable endeavors, and her significant role as a patron of learning and industry. Philippa and Edward III shared a deep and affectionate bond, a rare quality for a medieval royal marriage. They had a large family of 12 children, including 5 sons, who reached adulthood, ensuring the stability and continuation of the Plantagenet dynasty. This strong family life provided a bedrock for Edward III's ambitious foreign policy, particularly his claims to the French throne, which ignited the 100 Years' War. Philippa often accompanied Edward on his military campaigns on the continent, traveling with the royal court and providing stability and a visible symbol of royal authority. She was not a passive observer. She actively participated in military strategy and diplomacy when necessary. Her most famous act of martial influence came in 1346 during the Battle of Neville's Cross. While Edward III was away campaigning in France, a Scottish army invaded northern England. Philippa, pregnant at the time, bravely rode to the front lines, personally rallied the English troops, and oversaw the decisive victory against the Scots. After the battle, she showed remarkable clemency, famously interceding on behalf of the burgesses of Calais, who had offered themselves as sacrifices to save their city from Edward's wrath. Compassionate appeal, though perhaps embellished by chroniclers, became legendary, treating her humane qualities. Beyond military affairs, Philippa was a significant patron of education and industry. She was deeply committed to the intellectual development of the kingdom. She famously persuaded Edward III to found Queen's College, Oxford in 1341, specifically for the education of poor students who could then serve the church. This institution remains a testament to her vision. She also promoted the English wool industry, which was vital to the kingdom's economy, encouraging weavers from her native Hainault to settle in England and share their expertise, thus contributing to England's economic prosperity. Philippa also played a crucial role as regent when Edward was absent on campaigns. Her regencies were known for their stability and effective governance, allowing Edward to pursue his military ambitions abroad. Without fear of internal unrest, she maintained a strong connection with her homeland, using her family ties to secure alliances and maintain diplomatic channels, especially with the Low Countries, which were vital allies against France. Her enduring legacy is one of a beloved and highly effective queen consort. She was a foreign-born princess who penning integrated into her new kingdom, becoming a symbol of strength, compassion, and stability during a tumultuous period in English history. She was a popular queen, known for her generosity, her strong character, and her unwavering loyalty to her husband and family. Her influence, though often behind the scenes, was profound and consistent. Philippa of Hainault died in 1369 after a long and remarkably successful reign as queen. She was mourned deeply by Edward III and the English people. Her life exemplified how a foreign-born queen, through intelligence, loyalty, and a strong sense of duty, could become a pivotal figure in shaping a nation's history, not through overt power struggles, but through enduring influence and a steadfast commitment to the welfare of her adopted kingdom. Number 1. Anne of Bohemia. In the late 14th century, as the Middle Ages drew towards its close, a new kind of royal marriage brought together two distant European cultures. Born in Prague around 1366, Anne was the eldest daughter of Charles IV, Holy Roman Emperor and King of Bohemia, and Elizabeth of Pomerania. Her father was one of the most powerful and learned rulers in Europe, making Prague a vibrant center of intellectual and artistic life. Anne grew up in a cultured and cosmopolitan court, receiving an education that was likely broad and encompassing, familiar with diplomatic intricacies and religious reforms. Her marriage in 1382 was a strategic move to strengthen England's position against France during the 100 Years' War and to bolster Richard II's new regime. At the age of 15, Anne traveled from Bohemia to England to marry the 15-year-old King Richard II. The marriage was part of an elaborate diplomatic arrangement that included the end of the Papal Schism, though this proved elusive. Despite the initial political calculations, the union between Anne and Richard developed into a remarkably close and affectionate partnership, rare for royal marriages of the time. As Queen of England, Anne faced the challenge of a new culture, a new language, and a court often plagued by political unrest and economic hardship. However, she quickly adapted and endeared herself to the English people and nobility. She was known for her kindness, gentleness, and generosity, earning her the affectionate nickname Good Queen Anne. She was also recognized for her fashionable style, reportedly introducing the riding side saddle to England, a significant innovation for noble women. Anne's influence on the English court and its culture was significant. She brought with her a retinue of Bohemian and German scholars and artisans, enriching the intellectual and artistic life of England. She was a patron of literature and religious reform, notably showing an interest in the teachings of John Wycliffe, whose ideas, known as Lollardy, advocated for church reform. While Anne herself was not a Lollard, her presence and connection to intellectual currents on the continent likely provided a degree of protection and legitimacy to some of Wycliffe's, fostering an environment where such ideas could circulate more freely. Her most profound impact was on King Richard II himself. Richard, known for his volatile temperament and autocratic tendencies, was deeply devoted to Anne. She was his confidant, his companion, and often his calming influence. When Richard faced political crises such as the Peasants' Revolt of 1381, though before her arrival it set the tone for his reign, and later challenges from powerful barons, Anne provided steadfast support. Her mere presence seemed to stabilize. The king and chroniclers often noted how Richard's demeanor improved when she was by his side. One notable instance of her influence was during the turbulent years when Richard's authority was challenged by the Lords Appellant, a powerful group of magnates who sought to control the king. while some sources suggest she actively interceded on behalf of those targeted by the appellants. Her consistent loyalty and moral support to Richard were perhaps her most vital contribution. She represented an unyielding source of emotional and psychological strength for a king who often felt isolated and embattled. Anne of Bohemia did not bear any children, which was a source of great sorrow for both her and Richard, and ultimately posed a challenge for the succession. Despite this, their bond remained strong, and their marriage was considered a model of affection and partnership in a time when such unions were rare. Anne's life was tragically cut short. She died of the plague in 1394 at Sheen Palace, at the age of 28. Richard II was utterly devastated by her death. His grief was so profound that it reportedly led to an intensification of his tyrannical tendencies and a decline in his mental stability. He ordered the demolition of Sheen Palace, the place of her death, and never truly recovered from her loss. Anne's sudden passing removed a critical moderating influence on Richard, contributing to the erratic and autocratic behavior that would eventually lead to his deposition in 1399. Her death is often seen by historians as a turning point in Richard's reign, marking the beginning of his downfall. Anne of Bohemia was a foreign-born queen whose influence was subtle but profound. She was not a warrior queen or a regent wielding direct political power, but her impact came through her strong character, her cultural contributions, and, most importantly, her unique personal bond with her husband, King Richard II. She brought a breath of fresh air to the English court, fostered intellectual exchange, and, by her very presence, provided stability and solace to a troubled king. Her legacy is that of a good queen whose early death irrevocably altered the course of English history.